Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'm going to be sharing ghost stories from Nebraska. Let's get into it. Story 1. I have lived in the same house for about 15 years now, and ever since I was young, my sister and I have encountered some strange experiences. I will share some that happened to me. The first time I became aware that the spirit was in my house, I was 9 or 10. I had a friend over to spend the night, and we were in the basement. I went upstairs for a reason I can no longer recall. On my return downstairs, I fell. It was only about 6 stairs that I actually fell down, but I remember distinctly feeling hands on my back and a forceful push. As I lay at the bottom of the stairs, I looked back up to see if my sister or someone had pushed me. I saw a figure. It wasn't exactly opaque, nor did it have a shape. It just seemed that in this area the background looked less sharp and blurry. My friend came around the corner to see if I was okay. When I looked back to see the figure, it had disappeared. The next experience happened a few weeks after being pushed down the stairs. I was home alone, and I went to the garage to get a soda. I walked into the garage and heard a strange noise coming from the attic. I listened carefully and decided that they had to be footsteps because the noise would move about in the attic. Curious, I called out, "Hello?" Then it stopped suddenly for about a second. Then what sounded like a burst of energy or rage. The noise trampled toward the attic door. I ran back into the house and out the front door and refused to go home until someone else was there. It wasn't until recently that the being in my house adopted a visual self, or maybe it was the first time I noticed. He is huge. If he were a real person, he'd be 6'6" or 6'7" and 250 to 300 pounds. His body and face are all the same color, paper white, and he has a full head of jet black hair. The first time I noticed him in this form was last summer. I came home from a late night of partying. While I fumbled with my keys to let myself in, something huge and white came and stood right in front of the door on the inside of my house, so I could see him in the side light windows. I screamed. I told him to leave me alone, and he slid off the opposite way he came in. I rushed in my house and locked my bedroom door like it would do some good. He really likes to mess with people, especially me. He likes to steal things and move them. He really likes to inhabit electronics. One night, I had some friends over to the house, and we were in the basement. We kept hearing loud thuds upstairs. I was a little scared, but I assumed that it was just a cat. Only all the cats were out. I asked my friend Cody to please come investigate with me, and he agreed. We went to the first floor and found nothing strange, so we proceeded to the second floor. We heard an alarm clock going off in my parents' room. It was around 9 o'clock at night. No reason for an alarm to be set. What makes it really weird is that it was my mom's clock and it was doing the alarm beeps, but my mom only wakes up to the radio and her clock is set for that. We both thought it was really odd. I turned it off and went back to the basement. Later, after my friends had left, I was cleaning on the first floor, and out of the corner of my eyes I saw him move across the hallway, and he went through the door and out into the garage. I noticed that on the closet door in the hallway there was a coat hanger, and it was swinging wildly. I called my friends and had them pick me up. There have been many more experiences in my house, and I'm still not sure if the man is evil, or if they're to hurt me, or if he just likes to play jokes and scare me. Either way, I ask him on a regular basis to leave me alone. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. Story 2. I'll straight up say that I've never really been face to face with my ghosts, but I have heard and seen them and felt their presences. My house is about a generation old, I'm not too sure, but from the information I've gathered from the homemade Ouija board me and my friends made, I think a girl was murdered in this house a few years after it was built. She said her parents had had the house built in the late 1800s. I haven't actually asked her, but I figured that the other ghost had killed her when he and she were alive. I also figured that he was hung for murdering her. Now that I've given the brief description of my house's ghost history, I can now tell you my experiences with them. The first encounter was when I was walking by my loft staircase. I've always felt a strange presence when I walk by the staircase, and one time when I was walking past the stairs, I looked up in reflex, like when you look at someone who walks into a room. To my surprise, at the top of the stairs was the figure of a person. No, a person entirely, but a flowing outline that drifted in the corner of my vision, like when you stare at a bright light too long and you see the shape of the light stuck in your vision. From that time on, I knew my house was haunted. The second encounter I had was almost a year later. Of course, between that time I had heard strange noises, like footsteps in the basement, but other than that, there was really nothing significant. It was right about this time I started using the Ouija board in my friend's house. Despite the warnings my friend and I were given by another friend, I was laid in my bed, slowly drifting to sleep. Slowly, I was almost completely asleep when suddenly I heard a shrill scream coming from inside my ear. I knew no one else heard it because of the stillness in the house. At the time, I was too tired to really consider it and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I realized what had happened. The voice was a girl's voice, and it confused the heck out of me. I hadn't yet used the Ouija board in my house yet. Then the very next night, I was actually asleep. I have no clue what I was dreaming of what time I woke up at, or even why I woke up. But for some reason I woke up and found this person, not a figure or a haze, a person floating across my bedroom. It was only for a split second, but that was long enough to take in a few details. It was a girl, I'm sure of it. She had light hair, maybe blonde, that reached down to her waist. She was facing away from me and seemed to be heading toward the door, maybe leaving. I didn't see any feet, but I saw the bottom of the dress she wore seem to fade away. The sight was so amazing, I wasn't scared at all. I was more excited than really freaked out, even though I was. It took me forever to fall asleep after that, but eventually I did. Finally, my last encounter with the ghost girl was last week when I was sick. I was sitting in the bathroom on the toilet. My mom was at work. The same with my stepdad. My sister was at school. After a while, I heard the fridge turn on, but that wasn't it. I also heard the faint yet high-pitched humming noises of a muffled voice. It was singing a tune I had never heard before, but it was so familiar. It was coming from my basement, my sister's room. I figured it was the girl from the other night and the screamer. Then later that day, while I was sitting on the couch watching a movie, I heard a loud boom. Jumping and turning around to see what happened, I thought it was the cats knocking something off the table or something. Not the cleanest house in the universe, so I went to go investigate. After taking a few steps, I heard another boom. It was coming from the basement. It was so freaky, and I was so freaked out, I was too afraid to go to investigate. So I just went back to the couch and sunk into my seat, hoping whatever it was wouldn't notice me. I knew it was any of the cats because one was sleeping on my lap, the other was sleeping on the other couch, and the last was outside. So that is all I have of my house's hauntings. Sometimes I wish it was more, and something tells me I wish it wasn't at all. But still, it's there. There's not use trying to deny it. Story 3. I am a Christian, not a holy roller, but a Christian. I believe in God and Christ and the Bible. I try to live my life as a decent person and raise my family as such. As a Christian, I have tried to speak with a few ministers, even a Catholic priest, regarding these happenings. I've been told that if I believe in anything paranormal, I cannot be a true Christian. Well, I disagree completely. I was there, I know what happened. I remember all as if it was yesterday. My sister also remembers every detail as if it were yesterday. Not that she will talk about it all that much. For a long time she would not talk about it at all to anyone. Now I feel I have found a venue where I can share my experiences, get them out and share them with others who are sharing as well. Before the loss of my grandpa, he acknowledged the happenings in the house. My parents also finally spoke with them, very infrequently, then would change the subject. My parents divorced about 4 years after this, but even separately they would not speak much about the house. When they did, they were still so frightened it almost seemed angry. When I was a child, about 9, my sister was 5. We lived in a small older house in Omaha. I believe they're called cement slab houses because they do not have a basement, just a cement slab as a foundation. This house had the strangest layout I'd ever seen. As you walked in through the one and only door to the house, you entered the kitchen. It was very large, then a small hallway with the bathroom off to the left. A little further down the hallway, there was a laundry room. At the end of this hallway was a staircase leading up to the second floor. At the top of the stairs was a bedroom, then a living room, family room, another bedroom, and a sun porch. My grandpa had the first bedroom at the top of the stairs, and then my parents had the second bedroom after the living room. My sister and I shared the sun porch. My mom and grandpa had fixed it up as a perfect bedroom for little girls with curtains and heat vents, all frilly and cute. One evening my sister and I were on the main floor readying for bed. We had been up late that night for some reason and needed to get our teeth brushed and pajamas on to go to bed. It was about 11 p.m. I was waiting for my sister to finish in the bathroom. As she was the youngest, I let her go first. She had the door slightly ajar and I was sitting on the small step that led up from the kitchen to the hallway right outside the bathroom door, reading. All of a sudden I heard my sister scream. I looked over at the bathroom door and noticed that the light had gone out. I ran in the bathroom, and there on the window curtain was a man's face with longer light brown hair and a beard and mustache. There was a bright velvet cloth around his shoulders and a tremendous bright glow around his whole face and shoulders. The entire room seemed to illuminate this glow. My sister inched beside me. We were of course staring at the whatever it was. It said, "Do not turn on the lights. I will not hurt you." Yeah, right. I turned on the lights as quick as I could, and it was gone. I spent the next 10 to 20 minutes trying to convince my sister that it was all a joke, all our imagination, and we should just go to bed. I was shaking inside worse than I can remember, even to this point in my life. We went to bed. I, of course, was wide awake for what seemed like forever. All at once, around 1 a.m., my dad jumps up and all of us hear a tremendous racket on the second floor, which we were on. All of the doors were opening and slamming shut. The television was turning itself on and off repeatedly. All the lights were turning themselves off and on. We all ran into the living room. We had a small bed on wheels that folded in two for easy storage. It was in the closet in the living room. My mom grabbed my sister's and my hand and started to run for the doorway that would lead to the stairs and out. The bed on wheels zoomed across the floor and blocked the doorway. My mom was pulling on the bed from one side, and my grandpa was pushing from the other. The bed wouldn't budge. I am not sure what my dad was doing at the time, but he ran up and started pulling on the bed also. It would not move. My sister had silent tears streaming in her cheeks. All of a sudden, everything just stopped. We all went to the kitchen on the main floor, calmed down with my dad trying to recite some logical answer for what had just occurred. There was none. After about half an hour, we all went back to bed, hoping to salvage some rest. I remember looking at the clock. It said 1:45. I must have dozed off because I was awoken again. Looked at the clock, and it said 3 o'clock. The main floor was now making a terrible racket. It sounded like the house was going to crash down around us. My dad and grandpa ran to the stairs and went down to about the 4th stair from the bottom. I was supposed to stay put. Again? Yeah, right. I had a hold of the back of my grandpa's robe. Again, on this floor, the lights were going on and off. Faucets in the kitchen and the bathroom on and off, doors opening and closing. We had a gas stove in the kitchen and the burners were even igniting and then turning off and then over again. I honestly don't know how long this lasted. It all stopped, leaving the front door wide open. My parents and grandpas grabbed my sister and my hand and ran outside. We were outside for about 45 minutes or so when my parents decided it was their house and nobody or nothing was going to chase them from it. We all went back in. My sister slept with my parents. I slept with my grandpa. There were many, many other incidents in this house. We moved about 6 months after this first night I have described. I have driven by this house many times since I have had my own family. It is still there. I know for a fact it has changed owners and renters numerous times. At the top of the hill from the house, which leads to a dead end, there was a small, very small but long church. It was torn down about 20 years ago. It was rumored that this church had been used as a satanic church with rituals and sacrifices. I'm not sure who, what, or why it was torn down. It never had a sign with a name anywhere near the church, so I could investigate further, and I'm not sure if I would if I could. These events seem to open up some type of door because, well, let's just say that there have been strange things happening my entire life. Of course, not every day, but enough. Story 4. On January 1st, 2006, at 5:57 a.m., my father passed away. All of my family was there as we had been keeping vigil at his home for several days knowing the end was near. He had been pretty much unconscious for about 2 days and kept weakening from that point on. It was very difficult to have him go, but he has suffered so much over the past year that we all, my sister, two half brothers, and stepmother, felt he had had enough and was tired. In one of his more lucid moments, he had told me he was tired and he did not want to die in the hospital alone. This was about 6 days before he passed. We took him home from the hospital and made him as comfortable as possible. We had hospice care coming in and all spent as much time with him as possible. As I stated before, he passed away on New Year's Day. It was a Sunday morning. After he passed, my stepmother called our church, and one of the associate pastors came to the house to be with us. He visited for about a half an hour to an hour while we waited for the coroner and everything. He then asked what we needed and what we were going to do now. My husband said, well, it is Sunday, so I say we go to church. That is what Dad would have wanted. We all agreed and went home to clean up and get ready for church. When I got home, I went in and took a hot, relaxing bubble bath. I closed my eyes for a minute to relax. When I opened my eyes, I saw a white mist shaped like a man standing at the entrance to the bathroom door. My husband made me leave it open because he was worried. I said, "Daddy," and the mist was gone. At that point, I chalked it up to exhaustion. I do not remember the church service, but that afternoon my stepmother wanted us to come to the house to pick up a few little things my dad wanted us to have. My sister was there with her 2 girls and husband. I was there with my 2 girls and 2 boys and my stepmother. One of my stepbrothers were all there. My stepmother asked me to go up to hers in Dad's room and get Dad's watch off the dresser. At the top of the stairs there was a small bookcase built into the wall. My dad had placed a collectible small brass cannon and brass vase on the middle shelf behind a bouquet of flowers, still visible but blocked by the vase. As I walked by the bookcase, the brass cannon and brass vase shot off the shelf almost simultaneously and hit the wall across from the shelves, right in front of me. They fell on the floor and rolled to my feet. My niece, 11 years old, saw this happen, ran down the stairs and jumped in her father's lap. She would not move. I picked up the cannon and vase and placed them back on the shelf. I went into the bedroom and was looking in the dresser for the watch I had been sent after. I heard a noise in the hallway, thinking it was my family member. I spoke out for them to come in and help me look. No one came. I looked in the hallway and no one was there. I found the watch and entered back into the hallway. I looked down and the brass cannon and vase were in the middle of the floor where they had fallen before. I picked them up and set them back on the shelf. At that point, my stepmother hollered up the steps for me to grab the brass cannon and vase on my way down because my father had wanted me to take them. I picked them up and carried them downstairs, a little bit bewildered. While we sat there that evening, dealing with our grief and emotions, the hall light began turning on and off. You could count exactly 120 seconds between on and off switches. I went home that night very late and exhausted. I go to the house constantly to visit with my stepmother. The hallway still had strange occurrences, especially with items in the middle of the shelves and the lights in the hallway, both upstairs and downstairs. My stepmother pretty much refuses to acknowledge the occurrences and goes on. I think it may be my dad watching out for us a little bit in his own way. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.